Good evening and welcome to Marketing Shift number 3, Support with Story. I'm Nika Quirk from Meridian University, and we're with Christine Lee, who's our guest presenter tonight. Thanks for joining us in our marketing course classroom. If at any time you should get disconnected from this webinar, please just rejoin through the link and/or call-in number given in your confirmation email. Our intentions for our brief time together are to foster some connection, seed some ideas about developing as a marketing storyteller, and prompt the sharing of experiences and thoughts. Meridian University's programs are grounded in transformative learning, an approach that highly values experience, dialogue, and collective knowledge creation. So we are using Zoom as our webinar platform today. This allows us to all see each other logged into the video conference. Our presenter will be sharing some clips and some slides during the presentation. We suggest that you have paper and pen close by, as we'll be prompting you to reflect and take some notes, as well as to raise your hands to be handed the mic to share thoughts and responses with everybody. We'll be prompting you as we go along with these different activities, so you'll know when there's a moment to reflect. We're also going to ask that people mute themselves, except if you are called on, if you raise your hand and you're called on, because it makes especially if additional people join us, it makes the sound quality better if everybody but the presenter is muted. So if you haven't been on Zoom before, at the bottom of your screen are a variety of controls that you have. You can mute and unmute your audio. You can click on the little camera to turn your camera off at any time. Raising hands, we're just going to do it the old-fashioned way. So when Christine asks for people to interact, just raise your hand and she'll call on somebody because she can see your name on the screen. If you want to change your name, you can also do that as part of your controls. And you have access to chat. So we've been using that since the beginning of the call. I'm happy to see people doing that. All right, so let me introduce our presenter. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to showcase our guest presenter, Christine Lee of Nontrepreneurs.com. Christine is a marketing consultant and small business coach. She's marketed and managed content for big brands and socially responsible businesses, from Aveda to Yahoo. Now she shares her knowledge with nonprofits, healers, and creative types, the nontrepreneurs of her business name. I'm going to turn this presentation over to Christina and make her host at this point. So here we go. Christina, you've got the controls now.
Excellent. Thank you, Nika. I am so happy to be here and be with some like-minded souls and some creative brains. We have some fun things planned to do together today. And this is some storytelling and marketing are things that I'm passionate about, and the intersection between them is an area that I find that's really rich and rewarding, and I just want to share that with you and have some fun with it, have some playtime. So today we have three main objectives in this short time together. First, we'll just look at the relationship of storytelling to marketing and see what role storytelling plays in marketing. And we'll actually look at a couple of current marketing campaigns. We've got a couple of video clips to play and dissect them, look for the story, look for our responses and reactions to them. And then we'll take a step back and kind of look at things from a different viewpoint. Make a shift.
I can't believe we got the same Eric Rose, your artist of the year.
And we've got someone new on the phone, and we can hear you.
I hope Sarah and Adam are going to be able to do it.
Hello? There we go. Who's new on here? Neil. Someone from 707 is online. Someone from the Napa Valley. Okay, great. So the first thing I'd like to start with is an exercise to get us grounded in stories and the impact that storytelling has had on us. Storytelling in its pure form. So just take a minute, empty your mind, have your pen and paper at hand, and reflect on, think of a book or a movie or an oral story that you've heard. It could be a bedtime story. It could have been a kid's book when you were a kid. Some story, or just a story that a friend told you. Some story that had a big impact on you. So just take a minute to get grounded in that. Write it down and think about how it made you feel. All right. You still working or need another minute? So if you're ready, it would be great if you could unmute and share what your story was and why it was impactful, how it made you feel. Any volunteers on the line?
That's fine. I'll go ahead. I wrote down The Bluest by Toni Morrison. And I read a lot growing up, but that one I read when I was pretty young. I think it was just her craftsmanship. And I think that was the first time, in addition to kind of being caught up in story and content, I really understood or started to understand the way that language could be used as an art, and just the beauty of the way that she writes. I think that was my earliest kind of, experience of kind of recognizing beyond story and content, language in that way.
Thank you, Lena. That one's a classic. I love it too. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead. Matt, let's unmute you. There we go.
Yeah, I was thinking of a really weird movie. I forget what it's called, but it's some kid who's tormented and bullied at his school, switches schools and stages this like coming out as like a badass and the bad boy, and then trying to kind of reestablish and kind of overcome the difficulties he had. And just kind of thinking about how that story might kind of be a script that might affect how I look at the world. So.
Thank you, Matt. That does sound really impactful. Yeah.
So I remember in the 1970s reading the book Ecotopia, which was just, like Jules Verne's books, was just such an amazing forecast of the future, from the place that we could see from there, from the 1970s. And so much of that has actually come back around now with where we are now. And, being here at the Impact Hub makes me feel like I'm in that book sometimes, because it was really a forecasting of what might happen in Northern California in the far future, and in the Bay Area especially.
Mm.
It was visionary.
It sounds like it, yeah. Thank you, Nika. So those are stories that we think of as kind of classic stories that you find in books and in movies. And let's shift to marketing and the stories that we find there. So take a minute and go inside again. And if you can you think of any marketing campaigns, ads you've seen on TV or the computer, you've heard on the radio, saw in a magazine or a newspaper, some type of campaign that also had a big effect on you? Could be positive, could be negative, just anything that comes to mind. So take a moment to think of what comes to mind. Go ahead and write it down, also with a note on how it made you feel or why it's impactful. Are you still thinking? No, done. Okay. Anything to share, you guys? Did anything come to mind? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I remember someone in class once showed us the Scarecrow campaign by Chipotle. It
I
was
don't know that one. Yeah, can you tell us about it?
very powerful. It talks about basically like a scarecrow discovering like the farming practices of like factory farms, and then kind of being really bummed out. I was actually surprised they did it, because I'm not a fan at all of corporate food, but it was really impressive. It was kind of like this beautiful cartoon.
What do you think the story was that they were telling there?
It's almost like maybe like the story of the child basically seeing the horrors of the world, and understanding that kind of not everyone is good. It's kind of peeking behind the curtain.
I love where you just went with that, and we're going to come back to that soon. That's going to be a theme later, yeah. Thank you, Matt. Anyone else have something to share?
Yeah, actually, interestingly, I keep forgetting to put this. For me,
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to pull the thing back down. Commercials, the ones that stick with me are actually funny ones. You know, I might not buy the product, but whatever, the commercial's funny to me. Like, I love those Doritos commercials, and the one I keep thinking about is the one where the little boy builds the time machine, and the guy gets in it, and he's, you know, the boy's like, oh, you have to deposit your Doritos, and the guy's like, oh, it worked or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know why that commercial sticks with me. I think it's just so hilarious. And I don't eat Doritos, but I like the commercial. I don't know why that particular commercial sticks with me the way it does. But I just think there's something so hilarious about it.
What do you think Doritos is telling you with that ad?
You know, I guess it's supposed to be this whole kind of magic. You know, I guess this sense of reconnecting with magic in a way, I guess, or like, you know, Doritos being transporting or something, or like, I guess, maybe, I don't know.
That sounds good to me. And you also took it to a similar level that Matt did. I love it. We're gonna come back to that in a couple of slides here. That's great. And since you brought up Doritos, I'll just mention that one of the ads that came to mind that made an impact on me, just because it was humorous and fun, was also a Doritos ad. It won one of the Super Bowl ads, and it's the one where there's a new boyfriend who's supposed to take care of his girlfriend's little dog for the day, and he tries to tease him with some Doritos and get him to run through it like a glass door or a screen door. And the dog wins and crashes the door on top of the bad boyfriend. It was pretty funny. And it's one of those self-deprecating ads where the person who's in power, who's kind of mildly abusing their power, kind of gets taken down. So yeah, and it was fun. I thought that was fun. Okay. So I love where you guys went with that. And I want to, I was looking for an official definition of what storytelling is in its pure form, the way we just talked about it, right? In books and movies, that kind of thing. And Nika, if you could pull up the PowerPoint now, this would be a good time. So I found a great playlist of TED Talks on storytelling, and I'm going to give you the link, and I highly recommend that if you haven't watched it, sometime when you need inspiration, you should watch it. These are all, and we can click through to one more slide. Excellent, perfect. Okay, so there are half a dozen TED Talks in that playlist. The link for the playlist is at the bottom if you want to copy it and paste it if you're curious about watching it later. They have Isabel Allende in there. There's another filmmaker, the guy who created Lost gives a talk. And they all come down to a common denominator about storytelling. And Andrew Stanton said it in a really clear and concise way. Storytelling ideally confirms some truth that deepens our understanding about who we are as human beings. And I think both of you, when you articulated what the story was in the examples that you thought of, the books and films that have had an impact on you, that's exactly what you did. That's exactly where you went. You went to this greater human truth. So I'm just moving. There we go. I just had to move my screen a little bit so I can see what's going on here. Okay. So how does that relate to marketing, right? How does storytelling in a pure story form relate to what you do in marketing? So I also found an article in the Harvard Business Review about a study that they did, and we have that link in the PowerPoint too. The whole article is a good read, and it's a good survey of what's happening today, some of the new movements in marketing, about how everyone in your organization is really involved in marketing. It permeates everything. It has several good points in it, but they had a great, very pithy section on storytelling. And we'll start by just taking a look at this section. They said, high performers in our study are distinguished by their ability to integrate data on what customers are doing with knowledge of why they're doing it, which yields new insights into consumers' needs and how to best meet them. These marketers understand consumers' basic drives, such as the desire to achieve, to find a partner, to nurture a child, motivations we call universal human truths. And I would add to that the things that you guys mentioned, finding a little magic, what role you're identifying with in society, rebelling a little bit. All these things come back to, I think, universal human truths. And we look for those. We want to see ourselves and to be understood on a deep level and see those reflected. So they found that people who could do this well performed better at marketing. So I think that good storytelling is what sets successful marketing apart. In fact, you could make the case that marketing is storytelling in a broad sense, in a macro sense. But I want to dig into that quote a little bit, because Harvard Business Review has there are two kinds of storytelling that it's referring to in that quote, and I think they're important, especially to be up to date in 21st century with your marketing. So if you can click through to the next slide, Nika, we've got an emphasis in there. High performers in our study understand consumers' basic drives, motivations that we call universal human truths. So I think here they're referring or tangentially referring to the story that marketers tell potential consumers or active consumers, right? And this is maybe the first way that we think of storytelling operating within marketing. And that's an important thing to do. The story that you tell in your marketing, your advertising. But there's another story, and there's another form of storytelling going on in marketing, and they refer to it in this quote. So can we click through and take a look at the next slide, Nika? High performers in our study are distinguished by their ability to integrate data on what consumers are doing with knowledge of why they're doing it. So you also need to not only tell stories, you need to be able to listen to the stories that your customers are telling you. They tell you stories through their customer feedback, through their complaints, and they tell you stories with their behavior that you track in your data. So if you can look at that data, if you can see, for example, if you've got an online product and you can see who's clicking when, you can start to create a story about who that customer is, and you can understand what they're looking for when they come to you. For example, if you get a whole bunch of clicks at 8:59 a.m., you are their last piece of fun and inspiration before they start their workday. And that's what you want to give them, or you definitely want to make sure that you don't take that away from them, right? So you can start to create a story. Are these women or men? What's the age range? What type of places do they work at? If you can get that data, and the things that they buy from you, or the things that they download or click on or join, all of that data becomes a story. So I started, just to tell you a little story about how I discovered this and how it worked for me in my career. About 10 years ago, I moved to Yahoo, and I took a job there specifically to kind of get an online education, because they were known for education. They had classes all the time. They had the guy who invented the desktop on the Mac come in and give a talk. Anybody who'd written a book came in and gave a talk. So when I went into Yahoo and I'm playing on the network and getting used to it and doing all kinds of things through their portal, I kept getting served the same ad. And it was an ad for Swiffer mops. I was a 30-something female. They were serving me an ad over and over again for Swiffer mops. I had no interest in mops. In fact, most of the women I know at Yahoo were not doing any mopping. We worked long hours. We had long commutes. And if a lot of them would just have a cleaning service of some kind. If they were buying mops, they certainly were not giving it any thought. It was the last thing on their mind. And for almost 2 years, I got served that ad almost every day. And I felt this huge disconnect between all the information that I was giving them. I was downloading music from them. I was clicking on all kinds of articles. Plus, for work, I had to be on all kinds of properties and be involved in post content. I was giving them all this information. I was telling them such a great story about me and what I wanted, and they were not putting it together. They were not giving it to me. One of the first areas, and then ironically, when I got recruited out of Yahoo to go work for a startup, Facebook served me an ad that said, "Leaving Yahoo to start a startup? Here's an ad for startup capital. It was really great. It was visionary. It was a little uncanny, actually. I was a little worried when I saw that ad about just how much Facebook knew about me. But they were better at the targeted marketing at that point. So the one place where Yahoo was doing this really well was actually on their front page. This is where they started to put together the analytics about who's doing what on that page and why they're doing it, and using that to give people more of what they want, increase their engagement time, and their business model is selling ads so they can deliver more ads against it and make more money. So they, like most website homepages, people usually don't go to yahoo.com on purpose. They usually go there because they forgot the link to their email, or they forgot the link to check on their sports scores. And if you have websites yourself, chances are that your homepage is probably not the place that people want to go. They're going there because they want to do something. And so that on that homepage, you just want to make it easy for them to do what they really want to do. But Yahoo realized that since a lot of people were going there, that before they went to the place they really wanted to get to, Yahoo could serve them up some other content as kind of a sideline treat, get them to click on something if it was really irresistible to them, serve up more ads, make more money. And they started to collect all the data about these people, about what region of the country they were clicking from. They had information about their gender. They had information about where they came from on the web. They had information about what they did later, what they were buying on Yahoo, all kinds of stuff. And the editors started to work with the engineers who created algorithms to serve up more similar content, and the editors looked at the data to create and package more similar content, and to sometimes override just what the data was telling them, so that they had some human interest to it. And if there were things that were absolutely important, the president did something that day, or there was an international event, they would preempt the algorithms and create some human programming. And the humans wrote the pithy titles that picked the photos, and they produced that, but they were informed by the graphics and the algorithms and the data that they got. And so they got so good at this that they had really industry-leading statistics on click rates. Their performance metrics and their ad sales really blossomed, and they were actually written up. Their front page team alone at Yahoo got their own article. I believe it was in Fast Company about what they were doing there. So the reason why this is helpful, if you can do it, is that, many of us in marketing are looking for a big win. We look for that campaign. We look for that product or service that will help us to go viral and inspire exponential growth. But if you can pay attention to these small markers that you have available and interpret them and find the story of what your customers are telling you and respond to them to fulfill those underlying human needs that you guys have demonstrated you're already good at getting at, the underlying human value underneath, you can continue to have incremental growth while you're working towards going viral. And that's really what I found. Every place I've worked and every client I've worked for, first and foremost, we pay attention to those small pieces of information, and we strive every week for incremental growth. And you can actually get a big win over the course of a year or something like that just by doing that. Okay, thank you for listening to all that. Yes, this is perfect timing. Matt, you have a question?
When I think about the searching for the what and why, it seems like there's a big missing gap around ethnographic data, actually kind of going into stores and seeing what people are doing.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I think of a grocery store that you might look at your sales and maybe look at if you have a member system, you can kind of look at demographics and sales. But what about the woman that goes to the aisle of chips, spends 3 minutes there and doesn't buy anything?
So, yeah, go ahead.
And just kind of actually seeing how people are navigating the store, where are they going to, and just that kind of a physical person seeing how they're seeing the world and going through it.
So web businesses are a little easier to track customer behavior because they're doing it online. And this is one of the reasons why I have a whole folder of membership cards. I don't know if you have this yourself for rewards programs at the different retail outlets that I go to, because that's what they're doing there. They track what you're buying on that card and they look for patterns. And I don't know how much demographic data they have about you. They might try to collect that over time if you log in and do things for them. I don't know if they have a lot of demographic data, but they might have some information from your name, and they certainly have information about what you do attached to that card. And I'm pretty sure that they track it and they make decisions based on that. So even offline businesses, or businesses with a brick and mortar retail store, are trying to take advantage of these new systems to track the behavior of their customers and refine what they offer. Is that what you're talking about? Does that help?
I mean, that's the one side of it that seems to be happening. I'm curious about, it seems like they're not tackling the ethnographic side, the side where how this person's interacting with their environment, the stuff that the data doesn't show. So what's actually, like, if I were to be in the room while someone was actually going on a website, or to watch someone actually going through the store, I'm going to get information you can't get on those data spreads. And it seems like there's a lot that opens up, especially around different types of people in that realm.
That sounds really interesting. And that brick and mortar area is not really my area of specialty. I know they have mystery shoppers and that kind of thing. And when I was at Yahoo, they did actually go into people's homes and watch them use the computer in their home and write down everything. Instead of having people come in to take a user survey or to watch their user interface use, they realized that people got nervous in those kind of lab environments. So they started sending teams into the homes of users that they had an appointment with, and they would just sit and watch them use that site or use that service and do exactly what you're talking about, just visually track what they're looking for and what they want to do and how they do it, and listen to their feedback. I'm the brick and mortar world, I'm not as experienced with, but I bet they're trying to do things like that, and it sounds a little bit more challenging than it is for the web world. Yeah, I think you pointed out maybe a little bit of a gap there. All right, so let's talk about data. Does anybody here, do you just hate data? Does anybody here hate data and hate numbers? You can raise your hand. Yeah, Nika, you're okay with it. Do you guys love it? Anybody just love it? Not loving it either, yeah. Yeah, I started off not loving it, not being excited about it, but I just saw it as a tool, and I've actually really come to love it. And I have a secret trick to share with you to help you get more of your data and have fun with it and help you find the story in whatever data that you do have. Okay. So if you have trouble seeing patterns in the data, and it kind of looks like alphabet soup and you're not finding the story, you've got some facts and you're not sure what they add up to, you might actually need to just arrange it differently on your page. That's a good place to start, and you can play with it. Given the tools we have today, you can kind of play with it. And this is based on Edward Tufte's theory. Do you guys know who he is? We got a yes and a no. Yep. So he's a designer. He's a designer in several senses of the word. And he specifically works with statistical information. And he came to some prominence, or we started to hear about him after the Space Shuttle Challenger crashed. Big tragedy. And he actually, someone brought him the PowerPoint that the team had shown that cleared the Challenger team for takeoff. So he got to look at the data that the people who made the decision to say, this shuttle's going to be fine, we're going to send it up. He got to look at that data. He looked at it and he analyzed it, and he said, everything you people needed to know that this ship was going to blow up was here in this data and you didn't see it. And the reason you didn't see it is because you used PowerPoint and the necessary information was not side by side, so you couldn't compare it and you couldn't see what needed to be seen in that data. So that sounded very compelling to me. So I actually took his course, and I recommend, if you get a chance to take his one-day course at some time. It's just interesting he's kind of a crotchety old man, so it's just interesting to hear him talk and hear his viewpoint on things. And he is really good with data. I'm going to show you one of the examples that made me change my mind and start rearranging the data that I was looking at. Nika, if you can click one slide back just to mention. So this is a list of basic mutual funds. I think that 2 of them are noted as index funds, and I think more of them are actually index funds than you can tell from the title. So an index fund meaning they're mutual funds, they're a group of stocks that are grouped together. And index funds in particular are pegged to the market. So that means they consistently call out any funds that are performing lower than the market, right? They take out those funds. So I was looking at this, and it looked to me a little bit like the things they give you to pick your 401k, you know? So I was like, oh, this is interesting. It looks like 401k stuff. So let me see. And I'm looking, and you look at the numbers, you got a bunch of numbers. Some go up, some go down. It's hard to tell because they start low and it's like a big number. It's hard to decide which would be the best fund for me to go with for my 401k, right? Okay, so let's click forward one slide. So Edward Tufte created something that he calls a spark line. And he just tracked if all of the mutual funds had started at the same point, this is their action over the course of that year. And what do you see here? They're all the same. It doesn't, except one in the middle, they're all the same. It doesn't matter which fund you pick. This was mind-blowing to me because I was spending so much time picking out my own 401k fund. There's one in the middle bit, and he writes about this in his book. It's not the same kind of fund. It's like it's not an index fund, so that one did actually perform a little bit differently. So, and what happened when I saw this information was I realized it is very important the way you present your data. And the site that I was managing at that point, I just started lining everything up so the statistics that were interesting and meaningful to me were all connected to a name. I had my names of my emails for this site. I had their open rate, their click-through rate, the time of date that they were sent, every little piece of information just laid out so I could see it. And then I started highlighting any titles that were way above others. I started highlighting titles that were way below others. I started looking at the time of day. I started looking at the language and then using my intuitive and story-making part of the brain to try to figure out why some things were so much higher than others, why things were so much lower, and what the average was. And with that information within a year, we were able to double the open rates, double the click rates, a little more than double the click rates. And we also almost doubled the number of email newsletters that we sent out in that particular program because we realized that our audience was hungry for more. They just wanted it organized differently, and they wanted it to be really clear what it was. So it was personalized and it was organized on certain topics, so they knew exactly what they were getting and they knew what it was. All this had been buried in the statistics. Once I arranged it visually, we could start to see it, and we would talk about it and play with it and try new things. So this is whatever customer data you have, right? Whatever type of product it is, I really recommend getting it in there like it's a lump of clay and playing with it and owning it and having some fun with it, trying to see what the story is that your customers are trying to tell you with their data. Okay. And by the way, Tufte hates PowerPoint, which we're using today. He really doesn't recommend it. It's not his favorite. All right. So we're going to move into another section. any more comments or inputs on that before we view a couple of marketing campaigns and respond to them? Yeah, Lena, can you unmute yourself? I'll unmute you.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask. Yeah, I was gonna ask. So, what does he use?
Yeah, well, if you look at his, he doesn't use PowerPoint. I went to his all-day class, and he doesn't allow the internet in there or cell phones. And you get a bunch of books, and you have to take notes on a pencil and paper. And everyone's very quiet, and they do as they're told. He kind of has that environment, and he wants you to look at the books, and you look at him, and you look at the books that he's referring to, and you take your own notes on paper. And that's just the way he likes it. Although he does give recommendations that if you're going to give a presentation, you just do a couple of slides and you just have a couple cleanly represented statements or visuals that are simple, clear, and clean, because really that's all anybody takes away from a presentation anyway. That's his theory. And his big recommendation is when you're comparing things, they have to be side by side so you can see them together in that moment. Speaking of which, okay, so let's make a shift and take a look at a couple of marketing campaigns that are out there right now. So what we'll do, and this might take me a second to get it going, we'll have you view a couple short video clips, and they're really short, they're 30 seconds each. So have a pen and paper ready and take notes on your response. We'll give you a minute or so to take notes. And after the second clip, we'll have a space to share responses. So let's see. Nika, should I pull these up on my screen, or do you want to do that on your screen? What's the best way to do it?
Go ahead and pull it up on your screen.
Okay, here we go. You can see where I got Edward Tufte's chart path. And this might take just a moment. Okay, I have it up, and now I'm going to do a screen share. Let's see if it works. Share screen. You guys ready? All right, let's play. Okay, just take a minute to write down your impressions there. Okay, are we ready for the next one? Raise your hand if you're ready. I see nodding. Awesome. Okay.
Lowe's presents how to install a new washing machine with one finger.
Maybe a little more that way.
Now get 10% off Energy Star major appliances, $3.99 and above.
Okay, just take a minute to write down your response to that second ad. Okay, raise your hand when you guys are done. So anyone have a response that you'd like to share? And we're interested in, yeah, how you felt about it, just your response, and what story is it telling? Matt, you have the floor.
They both seemed kind of sexist, but the first one was kind of seemed like I was playing into like, you know, those clubs where the music's like basically blasting really quickly, and it's almost like geared towards the cocaine frat boy crowd.
I vaguely remember those clubs from my youth.
Yeah. It seems like they're trying to reach those people, like a very fratty kind of like low kind of thing.
Yeah, so if they were saying a sentence to them, any idea what that sentence would be?
Girls, girls, girls.
Did you feel included in that story or not so much?
No.
Yeah, not really reaching you. So that's something really important to think about our own marketing, that it's very possible to, in your own stories that you tell, it's very possible to leave people out of the audience that you don't mean to leave out. So it's a good thing to try on your story from other voices and other viewpoints. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Anyone else have a share?
Yeah, I'll share. I mean, I guess it was funny. The first one, I wrote confused, disturbed, disconnected. I just didn't get it. I didn't
The first
really.
one? Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know. It was just kind of weird. I didn't leave feeling like, ooh, let me get a fiat. It was just kind of like, I don't know what this is supposed to be right now. But
Yeah.
it was clear it wasn't like I wasn't the audience. Like I was very clear that I wasn't the intended audience.
I had the same feeling, Lena. And you know what's funny about that is I think we're in the audience of people who buy Fiats in America. Like I think women under a certain age,
Right.
I think that's who actually buys them. I have friends with that Fiat. So it's interesting. You see kind of a disconnect there,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on those? How about the second video? What's your response to that? Yeah, go for it, Matt.
I guess. I mean, what I heard was that like a woman can do it with her finger by basically pointing to the guy who's doing it for her, and then basically almost like, yeah.
How did you feel about that?
I kind of felt like it's almost like they're trying to kind of imagine what the executive is thinking who decided to do that ad, and it's almost like thinking, we're going to convince women that they're empowered by hiring our people to do things for them. And it's almost like they're trying to lash on to a cause and then undermine it at the same time.
That's a pretty deep and thorough analysis to think of it kind of a 30-second piece, right? You're seeing that this story that they're trying to tell, and you're also seeing where they fail. And what I'm not hearing in your guys' conversation so far is what is the deep human values that were underpinning those first meaningful stories, and even the meaningful marketing campaigns that you talked about, that you brought up earlier, right? Yeah. Lena, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what happened with both of those is that, so I think the first one, it was supposed to be some sense of youthfulness and fun, right? Or at least a particular perception of youthfulness and fun, right? And I think the second one was supposed to be, some notion of ease and convenience. Whether or not it hit the mark, I think, is another thing. but I think that that's kind of what they were going for. I just don't know that they hit the mark for everybody.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I think that is very astute. Did they hit the mark for you? Did you feel anything when you saw those, or were you not really connected to what you're seeing?
I wasn't connected.
Yeah. Okay. So they didn't do the job for you. That's important to note, I think. Yeah. Okay. It's so fun talking to you guys. Okay, so anything else on that? We've got one more exercise to do together, and then we'll be towards the end and wrap up for the evening.
I just wanted to say one thing about the second one. First one, I agree with Lena that I wrote down pointless. That was my comment.
Yeah.
The second one, I was really reminded of some long time ago now, several decades ago, during the feminist movement, especially in the 70s and 80s, there was a cigarette campaign, "You've come a long way, baby."
I remember that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not only the fact that she was a woman, but that she was a woman of color, and the service guy is a white guy, and he's down on his knees and he's moving things around while she points her finger. That there's a very specific power structure message going on there that I find interesting. And so that was the message that came to mind, that somehow you've made it, that you get to do that now.
Yeah. They're trying to upend the power structure and show some progress. Yeah. Yeah. Great. And yet they still kind of fail to grab us in that deep, meaningful way that we're looking for in the really successful story. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Yep.
This kind of came up earlier, but I guess one thing to kind of that makes me a little wary is if this is the "you made it," and if the one earlier about when I think the Doritos example of the cat commercial, where someone abuses their power and they get kind of hammered for it. I'm wondering if somehow these messages are giving people what they're wanting in a commercial form without actually, so that wish for it succeeds when they're actually wanting actual change in the world.
Yeah, you're getting at something deep, which is that materialistic piece that if you don't fully grab those human values underneath, it's kind of a hollow victory, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up these clips, because these are big, shiny ads with big budgets. And I see that there is a lot of room for you guys. There's a lot of room for you guys to do a better job of telling these stories better and really grabbing people in a deep way about things that are meaningful to you and that inspire you and move you and can do the same for other people. There's definitely room. Okay. Last exercise. So, and you were getting at this a little bit earlier, Matt. We've got one more exercise to do together, looking at storytelling from an aspect of viewpoint. And if you, Nika, could you put the slides back up? We've got a slide with a great quote by the novelist Chimamanda Adichie. This is also from the TED Talk that I referenced earlier. You could click forward maybe one. There we go. And she says, there is never a single story. And in her TED Talk, she goes into how important it is for us to empathize, which I know you talked about in an earlier talk, Nika, empathize and to see other people's stories and not assume that you already know their story and kind of try to be in their space. This is important in storytelling. So, okay, let's just take a step back for a minute, go inside, and let's try another viewpoint and looking at marketing from a cultural lens. Have your pen and paper handy. Okay, so imagine that you are a 12-year-old kid in a village in China. It's a fishing village. There's no factories around yet. Everybody grows their own rice. They fish their own fish. You've been on the boats a little bit. You know the factories are coming. You've been on your family's fishing boat up to the next village. You've got friends up there. You've seen Chinese TV, but the society is not really very industrialized yet, right? Now people are starting to get cell phones. And you see the two videos that we just saw together. You're this 12-year-old kid in China. And those two videos are two of the first things you've ever seen from the West. This is what you see from the West. It's your first image. What is your response to the first ad? And what is your response to the second ad? Okay, you guys pretty much done? Yeah. So who'd like to share from that new viewpoint? What did you think about those? And how is it different or the same as what you thought as yourself? Okay, go for it, Matt.
I guess the first one seemed really overwhelming and disorienting, and almost like in contrast with the values that it had, especially China, where it's more collectivist. The second one, like the washing machine, almost seems like what's that? I mean, I've never seen it before.
They'd have to have a little demonstration there, right, of what's going on with the washing machine. They have to have some clean clothes coming out. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, yeah. Anything else? Let's just take a few moments to share what's come up for you so far. What your thoughts are around this conversation and the role of storytelling in marketing. What are you sitting with now? Yeah, go for it.
I guess like it seems like there's a lot of marketing and business is data driven, and there's a huge hole as far as kind of actually talking to people and seeing what's subjectively happening for them and how they're navigating the world. Beyond that, it'd be interesting to see how companies move, because if people are coming at things from different angles, one way to look at it would be to try to synthesize more of the voices in. But I'm wondering how they could kind of create campaigns that hit each people on their point of entry to the to whatever that product is.
Right, how you can get so specialized in those campaigns.
I'm wondering if they should be more specialized, where they're actually doing more targeted campaigns based on how those demographics are meeting their product, rather than trying to meld the missing voices into the ones that are missing the mark.
Did you want to jump in on that, Nika?
Yeah, actually, I had several thoughts. First of all, the very first one of these webinars that we did, one of the things that we did was kind of move through the history of marketing and look at it through the integral view. That originally you knew your customer. You just exactly what Matt is talking about. It was all about personal relationships, having them come, to your market stall or into your store, or going into their home and actually, like dressmakers went into people's homes and custom designed things for people. It was very intimate. And that's how you knew all of this data, was through that personal interaction and what you learned from that. Then, as marketing became a science, we had more technology to be able to gather data. We got kind of too reliant on that, and it became very objectified, like I'm going to hold all of these people at a distance and have an opinion about them, or draw my own conclusions about them. And then I'm going to feed that back to them because thinking my conclusions are fairly true, right? And now, what we're talking about a lot in our marketing class right now is really getting into multiple loop kind of feedback, where, you're whether you're using technology or whether you're sitting or standing with the person or encountering them in the marketplace somewhere in person, that there really is more of that engagement. So one of the things that I'm hearing, that I think I hear Matt talking about, is where are we in our relationship with that product? Are we an early adopter and we've had a long time relationship with this, or are we somebody who's never seen it before, have no idea what the value of it really is, or somewhere in between? That we know that there are different types of relationships, phases of relationship that we go through. And, and it's not just a big, like, everybody gets glommed together into this one data set.
Right.
It's much more complex than
yes.
that.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting that we're kind of coming back full circle in some ways, and this high touch, really trying to understand consumer stories is up again, but we need to shift.
Right.
We as practitioners of marketing need to shift. We have all these tools and all the data and all of that kind of stuff, but where are we practicing from, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Any thoughts on that, Mac?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with a lot of what you said. I was looking at a marketing position for a co-op, and I didn't get it. They didn't even interview me but when I was thinking about it and just kind of imagining what that would be like, they have a very diverse customer base, and so when you go to their events, it seems like the stuff in store is geared towards old people. The marketing they're doing is this mess of like all these different ideas put together, and I was almost wanting to see them like, why are young people coming to the store? How are they coming across their information? And what would draw in the young person? Like, what would make them go, wow? What do old people caring about? And just kind of seeing how people meet the store. What are they buying? and then also and understanding it from that more subjective lens, where it's really like, actually looking at what they're specifically buying, but where are they walking into the store? How are they? What's their relationship with it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally support that.
Exactly.
Christine, I'm noticing that we have 2 minutes left. So do you have like a closing comment that you want to say before I kind of wrap it?
Sure. Just that storytelling is a key part of marketing, and all those skills that you've gained reading your childhood books and watching those movies, you can really bring them to bear and have fun and create that added extra thing that a lot of marketing doesn't have, that really reaches people underneath and serves their souls. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. So I want to thank everybody, including Neil and Claudia, who I know have just been listening, and you'll be able to access the recorded video once I send it out, and be able to see what we were referencing with some of the visual content. We have a last one in our series on May 28th, which is about more interfacing with a client and calling out their own vision into the design of what you do together. Also, if you're interested in the Integral MBA, I'm the core faculty for that program, and I meet with prospective students all the time and have one-on-one conversations about what we're doing in the program, and try to hook you up with the right information to answer your questions. So I think we'll call it an evening. It's been great. I want to thanks very much to Christine.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you all for participating.
Yeah, beautiful presentation. Thanks, Matt and Neil, and thanks to Lena, who's no longer here, but she was a great participant, and Claudia on the phone too. I know you're very engaged in what we've been doing, and I hope you have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.